Welcome to the Omnibus Show, a program for people who are interested in everything, with deep conversations on a wide variety of subjects. And now your host, Dave Gibbs.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Omnibus Show, the program for people who are interested in everything, with deep conversations on a wide variety of subjects. This week's guest is Jeff Worrell. He is at large Carmel City Council member who previously presided over the council and has served on the Carmel Redevelopment Commission for over 15 years, which has played a large part in developing Carmel from a suburban city of Indianapolis to its own destination. He's an entrepreneurial businessman who created the medical equipment company Advantage Medical, then sold it to the Scripps companies. Jeff has been deeply involved in the civics of Carmel during the 30-plus years that he and his family have lived here, including leading the Chamber of Commerce, Carmel Fest board member, council liaison for Crystal Kindle Market, our Christmas market. He also serves on many boards that include Rotary, the Parks Board, St. Vincent Carmel Hospital, his church, as well as having written for the Current newspaper, co-hosting the TV show Connecting with Carmel, and he founded the Good Day Carmel newsletter. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you for having me.
Done quite a bit there.
I'll tell you
It's good
what.
to have you here today.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, well, thank you. Your involvement in the city of Carmel is quite extensive. I could go on for hours just talking about
But let's
that.
not.
You've left a strong imprint on the city. And going into chapter 1, would you please tell us about your entrepreneurial journey and how you made Advantage Medical happen?
Sure. And I do love Carmel, so this has been a labor of love. But I moved to Carmel back in 1988, and I had started a medical equipment company that specialized in physical therapy equipment. And I learned a lot because I started out with a partner, and that relationship soured eventually, and I learned the importance of documents you sign on day one can come back to haunt you on day year 3 or whatever.
Yes.
And that did happen to me. So we split, not amicably, we split through a lawsuit where I ended up taking over the company, handling all the debt and taking care of that, and then going from there to a great, it was a wonderful experience. But I learned a very valuable lesson about partnerships.
Yes. What a lot of people don't know about Indiana is that we actually have a number of significant medical equipment companies.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And yours was one of them.
Yeah, and we, as I said, specialized in physical therapy equipment, and we now have 2 of the largest private. Actually, one is a stock company and a public company, I should say, and one is owned by private equity. But 2 out of the top 5, over 2,500 clinics nationwide. They're growing, and we handle all that, as well as your typical physical therapy clinic that's on the street corner in your local community.
Yeah. Well, personally, I had an arm problem that I had to go to the St. Vincent here in Carmel,
Good. I'm glad
physical
you chose
therapy,
St. Vincent.
and they've got great team, and they had great equipment and helped me get my arm back to normal. So
Well, that's what we do. That equipment came from Advantage Medical, St. Vincent, being one of our great clients, and very proud of the work that they do, and the fact that they're one of our clients.
yes, well, that's fabulous. And then now on the civic side, one, as I said earlier, one could go on for hours, but what would you say is your greatest contribution to the city of Carmel?
That's a great question. If I had to just, I guess, narrow it down to one concept, it would be trying to remain positive, speak well of our community and the people that are in it, whether we agree or disagree.
Sure.
But trying to return a level of statesmanship to Carmel. When I first ran for office, one of the reasons I ran is because it felt to me like our government in Carmel was broken, very divisive, a lot of arguing, a lot of airing dirty laundry in the newspaper, on TV, etc.
Yeah.
And I just felt like we could do better. So one of the promises I made when I ran for office that first time was to promise never to disparage my community or my colleagues or the people in it. And that has served me well, and it's something that people have remembered me for. But, Good Day Carmel was another way that I would help to try and bring positivity to our community by sharing every day to our readership positive stories about people, places, things, activities in Carmel, and that's also been something. So I would say trying to develop a sense of statesmanship, taking the high road, being positive, being very transparent, communicating, collaborating, I should say.
Sure. Well, that's a very good quality in these days, particularly now.
Well, even in politics.
Especially in politics. But so 88 it was when you moved to town. That's when I moved to Seattle that year.
Oh.
And that was quite a good year for me in my life, and quite a good year for you and your family. But when you first moved here, then, because I came through here with a girlfriend to a wedding. I wasn't very. I was 65 down to Bloomington for IU, and then back home in Northwest Indiana, and then eventually I moved here. But when you first moved here, tell us how is that? What was it like, and how has it transitioned?
Well, it was very, very different. I believe that we were probably a population of under 20,000 when I first moved here. I believe that the year Mayor Brainerd took over in 96, we were at 25,000 population. So now we're at 101,000, so very, very different. So I had my company, and one of the things that I did was I joined the Chamber of Commerce. And so by joining the Chamber of Commerce, we thought everything was just perfect and fabulous. We were your typical suburban community, and there wasn't much to do in Carmel after 8 or 9 o'clock. Well, for sure after 9 o'clock, but 8 o'clock at night, we went to work. Most people worked out of Carmel somewhere, and then we came home. We had fantastic schools. But we didn't even really have much parkland, or we certainly didn't have a downtown. So it was just we were a bedroom community.
Yeah, bedroom. I grew up in a bedroom community in Munster, Indiana, state, and
Lovely
very much like that. Dad would go to work and come home, and
yeah, and there was certainly the Rotary Club and the Chamber of Commerce.
Yes.
Those were probably those were so much more important back then because there was nothing else to compete.
Right.
There wasn't entertainment. There wasn't other things to do. Here we are at Feinstein's, and the lobby of the hotel is always engaged, regardless of anything going on. It's always activated up there, and that's something that just didn't exist.
Yeah, no, this is a very, very cosmopolitan hotel. It's a boutique, and Feinstein's is like cabaret out of like one of the. I'm thinking of one of the hotels in New York City around the park, Central Park.
Well, and that is the concept. Have you been to a show here yet?
I haven't yet.
We got to get you here.
All
it's
right.
fabulous, and anyone that might be listening, it's something in 1988 that did not exist. And of course, I have to credit Mayor Brainerd and his vision when he took office in 1996 for wanting to do all this. I remember, so I said I was involved in the chamber, and I remember that year, the year that Mayor Brainerd took office, I was president of the chamber. And of course, he's the new mayor. No one really knows him, and he wants to come just meet the board of directors for the Chamber of Commerce. So we were in an old farmhouse on Main Street, just east of Rangeline. No one can even remember that it was there, but that was the headquarters for the Chamber of Commerce. And we were up in the attic of this old farmhouse, huge conference table, and back in those days, it would be your bankers and your lawyers and business owners and CPAs who were the leadership of Carmel back in those days. Yeah. He comes rolling in with all of these huge poster boards of what he thought Carmel could be. They were architectural renderings. And he makes this presentation. We're sitting on Main Street, nothing like what it looks like now.
Yes.
And no one in that room, including me, could imagine that he could even accomplish half of it. Mm-hmm. And as we know, and I have been lucky enough to play along in that arena, but he did what he said he would do.
Yeah.
So so to your question, so much different. Now I feel like we've got not only a wonderful place to send your children to school, but we have a beautiful place to live. We have a beautiful, active, interesting lifestyle and quality of life. And we have a variety of people with variety interests, variety of tastes who come here to live, who want to live, and that just expands my horizons as well.
Yes. Well, it's fascinating because it's a very much a dynamic town.
It is, and we're going to have a big transition, with the new mayor coming in, and so it's all about what's the next best thing. How do we keep being number one? And that's something that I'm really focused about.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Well, that's it for Chapter 1, and we'll be back soon with Chapter 2. Well, welcome back. We're here for Chapter 2 with Jeff Worrell, here at Feinstein's in the Hotel Carmichael in Carmel, Indiana. And civics is a very important aspect of our communities. What would you suggest people do to get involved with their own town, their city or their town, taking into account their time constraints and their talents?
Well, that's a great question. Maybe I can just relate it to how I got involved.
Sure.
When I started my company, I think I might have mentioned this, I joined the Chamber of Commerce. And the thing that was unique about that was that it was an opportunity for me to not only connect with other business owners, but I connected with the leadership of our community. So, yes, the bankers and the lawyers and the accountants and everybody that's out there leading the community, but also the fire chief, the police chief, and in my case, eventually the mayor. When I first joined, it was Mayor Ted Johnson, who I got involved and he asked me if I would take over our 4th of July celebration, which was called Carmel Fest. And that saying yes to that one thing is why I believe I'm sitting here talking to you today as a Carmel City Councilor. Because that was, back in those days, now we have lots of festivals now, but Carmel Fest was the only, everybody gathered on July 3rd and 4th to celebrate our country's founding, and it was the major thing and a great way to connect with all the different assets of our community, from city assets to private assets to people who just wanted to be a part of it. And so I really learned how to run an organization, get involved, interact with all the different entities that require cooperation. And it's frankly where I learned how to light a match and launch the fireworks, which is my favorite part. But that was 30 years. I just had my 30th anniversary last year of working on
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. Thanks. But so to anyone that might be thinking about it, you have to, want to. Mm-hmm. And then I would say it's finding one thing, focus on it. Now, maybe it's not a festival. Maybe it is simply helping, like with our Carmel Youth Assistance Program or any of the other charitable organizations. We have hundreds of nonprofit organizations who have their specialty, their niche, and it is those connections that you make as you have to interface with other organizations and like I said, with the city, that really helped me to get involved and took me to Rotary and to St. Vincent's and all these other entities I'm involved in.
Well, that's very good advice. I think with a lot of the divisiveness out there, the best thing one can do today is get involved locally and be constructive.
That's right, and we need people. I routinely hear from somebody who says, I've just retired. I've been 100% focused first on my family, then as family got older, my career, all that kind of stuff, and all of a sudden I'm now retired. How can I get involved in Carmel? Send me your resume. We have this folder that we keep when we have committees, commissions, boards, activities where we need people to get involved, and we will plug you in. One of the best ways is to just go to the city's website and sign up for Volunteer Carmel, which is a kind of an ambassador corps that we create for residents in Carmel who want to get connected. Then you can tell us what your skills are. You'll stuff envelopes or you'll direct traffic.
Sure.
From A to Z, soup to nuts, we've got a place for you in Carmel.
Wow. Well, that's very good. Thank you.
And I'm going to expect you to do that. You're in between podcasts. We need you to volunteer at for Carmel.
All right. Well, we'll talk about
You don't
that.
sound very excited.
No, I'm thinking of my next question, but I am excited
gotcha.
about that.
Okay.
But we did talk before the show about
Yes.
sister cities.
Yes.
Sister
yes.
cities, I've been on those before.
And that's an expertise you have. We would love to take our 5 sister cities and turn them into 6.
There we go. That sounds very good. Well, thank you very much. Now, in your recent campaign for City Council, you did a video on the issue of debt. Considering both sides, it's taking both sides of the view of that on debt and the concern for growth in the city and limiting spending, you pointed out the use of debt. Can you explain for a larger audience how this works to the community's advantage? Because I think that video was very helpful because debt, people see it from different angles.
Right. So I have been known to say that I believe our debt is really an asset of our community. Now, I do not mean asset from the financial term, but asset is in a treasure. And the reason I say that is because our debt has allowed us to create the infrastructure and provide a community while we're growing, and we are absolutely still in our growth phase. Now we might be in maybe chapter 3, heading to chapter 4, but we are definitely still a growing community, and this is the time you want to invest. But it has been really the secret to our success, that financial engine. Here's what I mean by that. Well, the first thing I'll say to allay any concerns is when it comes to debt, I think to be fair, what I ask people is, number one, we must talk about debt in relation to our income. Same thing for me when I had a mortgage. I was a young family, needed a roof over our heads. I couldn't reach into my pocket and pay for a full house, but by using debt wisely, I was able to get into a home, sell that home, move into a bigger home, sell that one, and kind of parlay that into taking care of my needs at the time based on what I could afford. It's the same thing with the city. Our debt, and people are hearing these huge numbers, $1.5 billion. Well, those numbers are somewhat skewed, but even if it was $1.5 billion, which it's not, it's really $884 million in principal. But what is the relation to our income? Our assessed value, which is what our revenue is based on, is $10.6 billion. So you have to take that into account. But the other question I ask people is, well, tell me what worries you about our debt. When you hear Carmel has too much debt, what does that make you feel like? What are you worried about? What are your concerns? And frankly, what I've learned is that it comes from people's understanding of how our federal government approaches debt. Mm-hmm. And really that's deficit.
Right.
Carmel doesn't have a deficit. We have a balanced budget every year because by state law, we can't have a deficit. So we can only spend what we can afford. All right, could we spend less? Well, let's talk about that. Right now, the way the numbers are in my most recent video, which is totally up to date, the residential property taxpayer is only responsible for 13% of that debt. So let's think about that. So if I'm fearful that we have too much debt or we're deficit spending, but only as a residential property taxpayer, I'm only concerned about 13% of it, who's paying the rest of it? Mm-hmm. Well, the secret to our success is that it is being paid for by the businesses who want to come to Carmel because of the community that we've built, great transportation, great schools, active lifestyle. And so they then bring jobs. And so they pay commercial property taxes, which is about 48%. The jobs they bring is around 18%. And then we also are the only community in Hamilton County to own our own utilities. That is paid for 100% by user fees. Mm-hmm. No tax dollars go into that. And we even process Westfield's wastewater sewage. So we're actually making a few bucks on Westfield. So it's well managed debt that is being used wisely in order to build the infrastructure that you see. I hope that wasn't too blah, 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 but that is...
I think it's informative because, I've been in business like you've been in business, and I think your business background in entrepreneurship has informed you, from what I'm hearing, on the knowledge of that, and that is a lot to bring into city government, and that the city leaders know that is very helpful. And it can be easily misunderstood when not fully understood. That's why more people need to go and listen to what's going on.
Yeah, I hope they'll watch my video where I try and succinctly kind of narrow it down with some visuals,
sure.
And that can be...
I'll post that.
Yeah,
we'll post that on the notes, on the notes in the description. Mm-hmm. And so, well, thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. What is next for Jeff Worrell and coming up with the city of Carmel?
Well, we have 6 new city councilors, which will be joining our full council of 9. So I'll be one of 3 incumbents. And so I intend to, just like was done for me when I was a new councilor, I want to provide some leadership, some opportunity to immerse our new councilors in how the city works. Here are the connections that you need to make with staff, with departments, to understand what the departments all do in order to make sure that you are effective in representing the residents who live in your district. So that's number one. And certainly helping with the transition from the old mayor to a new administration. I currently serve as the president of the City Council, and I feel like that's a role that, we'll know after the general election who everybody is, and then can take over in making sure there's a smooth transition into 2024. But I think I mentioned I want to help find what's the next, how do we continue to be number one? So we're number one at so many things right now, mm-hmm. Safety, best place to live in America, best schools, all these kind of things. And so I want to make sure that we stay out in front, just as 30 years ago, city leaders way before me decided that they would have a wonderful sign ordinance that set us apart and kept all the clutter out of our air and created the Meridian Corridor, which is the base of our financial stability. Those kind of things we have to keep pushing, keep finding the next. And without Mayor Brainerd here, it's up to the rest of us mm-hmm. to now look for the next best thing, the next right thing to do for our residents.
Well, thank you. Certainly Carmel is taking a lead in that. And it seems that a lot of the urban dynamics are changing in our country, and that there is a growing, not just Carmel, but cities across the country that are not of, Indianapolis, Chicago, New York size, but they're creating a new dynamic. and what I call them destination cities, where they're their own place, they have their own identity, and they're not just merely a bedroom community.
You are absolutely correct, and I appreciate you bringing that up, because that's also another reason that you still see office space being built in Carmel, because we have regional and smaller HQs that may have multiple facilities throughout the country, not just one big HQ in downtown Indianapolis, but want to have them in the areas where their employees live. And so that's why we are so well situated to take advantage of our changing, business environment and how communities meet the needs of their citizens, where I don't have to go to Nora or go to Indianapolis for a show. I do go to a Colts game, of course, but how I don't have to leave Carmel for most things unless I choose to leave Carmel.
Sure. Well, great. Well, Jeff, thank you for your telling us your story and for sharing your civic insights. I really, really appreciate that. Thank you for being with us today. We look forward to our next episode with you on the Omnibus Show.
If you enjoyed this program, please like, share, and subscribe to continue the conversation. For the Omnibus Show newsletter, please sign up at theomnibusshow.com.